Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford, along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford and we are back with episode 2 from season 3. Now, it's been lovely to hear from people that they've wanted the podcast back after our little break that we took. And bearing in mind, I kind of thought that nobody ever listened to it. And actually, it seems to be that people have really missed it. So we won't have such a long break again. And we've got some great guests coming up in the future. So we are back for a while yet. And today's episode is a really interesting one. And today we're talking to Nicholas Davies. Hello, Nicholas.
Hello. How are you?
How are you?
Amazing. Wishing I was in Belize at the moment, but there we go.
Well, there we are. So Nick has just given away the topic of today's podcast. And a few weeks ago, we launched a new trip to Belize in Guatemala. And a few people had asked for this, and it had never really been on our radar in terms of a trip to launch. Now, Belize has always been on my bucket list as an avid scuba diver. You know, one of the places I've always wanted to scuba dive was the Blue Hole in Belize. But I kind of never really thought there would be that much interest from our bucket listers. But the trip has already sold really, really well. There are still some spaces left on it, but we thought we'd get Nicholas on today. Obviously, he has helped us curate our itinerary for this trip and is going to be supporting us in country. So we kind of thought it would be great to get a bird's eye view on Belize in Guatemala and to find out from Nick why more people should be adding it to their bucket lists. So, Nick, you know, you're sat in the UK at the minute, but where did your love of Belize in Guatemala first come from?
I was actually in the Dutch Caribbean for 11 years, running a very fabulous dive resort and luxury resort. And phone call from an old friend saying, if you love me, you'll say yes. I'm going to put somebody on the phone. And long story short, I said yes. And 3 weeks later, I was on a flight to Belize. My task there was to open the first really uber luxurious jungle lodge. And which I did. And after 2 years, kissed a girl, never left. It's that simple, really. And all things followed from there on in terms of Dara travel and the work that we do in country.
Perfect. And what was it that obviously the kiss obviously helped keep you in Belize, but what was it that really drew you to Belize in the first instance?
Well, it was not something I did consciously. As I said, it was helping out a friend. My skill set was opening hotels as well as travel. And but once there, it was very quickly apparent that this was going to be somewhere I would stay a very long time, not just the original 4 months of the contract, which went on to 2 years, and then ever since. So it's, I think it's the diversity, the depth of breadth of things to do in the country, obviously the climate, that goes without saying, and the people. I mean, with the 9 very strong cultures in the country, all getting along harmoniously, well, and that fuses into sort of every part of life and every part of tourism in the country, which is kind of a little bit unusual, but quite special, and one of the things that glues everything together.
How would you describe Belize then in terms of tourism? Because obviously a lot of people have maybe had a Caribbean holiday before. It's been they've gone to a very touristy place in the Caribbean. Where do you feel Belize fits in with that?
I think it's a very unusual product because it does straddle 2 very different dynamics. We talk about reef and rainforest, second longest barrier reef on planet Earth, and the pristine rainforest jungle, which gives rise to so many touring opportunities. It's a pocket rocket, really. That's the way I would describe it. Locally, we call it the jewel. That's just our terminology internally. We say, we talk about it rather than Belize. We say in the jewel today. And I think the unusual thing that people won't always know that it was a British colony. It used to be called British Honduras. And in September 81, it became Belize, independent nation. And it's roughly the size of Wales with the population of Cardiff. So you can imagine that it's very sparsely populated, very easy to travel around. There are no roads more than what we would have as a small A road in the UK. So it's very little traffic, easy moving around. I guess those are the sort of dynamics. Pocket rocket because it's a small country, and you can be having breakfast on the reef, and you can be having sundowners on the border with Guatemala in the jungle in the evening, and in the meanwhile have done several things on your way from A to B.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that really attracted me to it, because one of the things that we like to do at the Bucket List Company is create what we call our best of trips, and that is to be able to go to a country and for people to see the best that country has to offer and almost tick that country off their bucket list. I mean, the world is a massive place. People want to see as much of it as possible. Obviously, we hope people fall in love with Belize and they want to go back. But I think what Belize really offered us was the ability to create a best of itinerary that people could tick off and not feel the need that they had to go back. They could feel that they'd done it and they'd seen it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And kudos to you and your team with this the company name. It's very appropriate. And the itinerary that's set up, I think, speaks exactly to the name of your company and what you stand for. The list of things rank among certainly my favorite things that I would do on a similar trip, with one exception, I have to say, the black hole drop, which terrifies the jeepers out of me.
Don't say that.
No, I sent my wife on it, so she did absolutely brilliantly. I just have this innate sort of fear of heights. Anything taller than a chair worries me, so don't worry for everybody else. They'll be absolutely fine with it. It's totally thrilling. But everything else on there is just really it's a who's who of bucket list things that you would do on a trip to Belize and Guatemala. Definitely.
So talk us through the itinerary then, and why those things were put in the itinerary. What are people going to experience? What are people going to see on this best of Belize Guatemala adventure?
Absolutely. ATM, which is, I have to very quickly say, is not an American cash point machine. It actually stands in Maya for Aktun Tunichil Muknal. It's a cave system, and it is arguably the number one cave or nature experience in all of Central America. Now, we don't say that. This is said by National Geographic magazine, and I think they know their onions a little bit. So we tend to go and skew towards what they're telling us. You start the day by walking through a pristine jungle environment. You actually have to swim into a cave. Now, there is a dry option, not a dry option, I mean a non-swimming option. Everyone is given safety gear, of course, and the guides can take non-swimmers through another route into the cave. It's still in the water. You then wading, sometimes knee deep, sometimes up to your chest in underground rivers. And, I have to state that Belize is very, very strong on safety. Before any tour, any day, all the guides are checking the weather conditions, checking the conditions, particularly of cave experiences. It's inborn with our tourism product. And there are certainly rules about how many members of the public a guide can take into experiences like caves. again, to keep the group small and to keep it a more personalized and quality experience. When you've waded through an underground river, maybe explored a couple of little other crawl spaces, you get to what's called the Xibalba. The Xibalba is the Maya underworld. And this is where when the city of Caracol was fighting with Tikal, it wasn't going very well for the Belizean Maya, and they were losing the war. So they think they weren't appeasing their gods. So they retreated into this cave system, and they made sacrifices. There was shards of pottery discovered, and that is because once the sacrifice is made, you crack the pot so all the evil spirits might come out. You walk up about 3 meters, 10 foot into the Xibalba. You take off your shoes so to protect the hallowed ground. You're walking on bare feet with your guide with headlamps, and there you come across a skull. Nothing was touched from the day the site was discovered, and in order to preserve it for our grandchildren, we only allow 125 people a day into the cave. So it's definitely something that's booked in advance, and because there's only a few guides in the country that have the training and expertise to guide in the tour safely as well. Once you're in the chambers, you'll see shards of pottery everywhere. I've explained sort of how that exists. And then the final chamber, you climb up a ladder, and there is a full skeletal remain of a child, about 15 years old, and in a prone position, which is quite amazing. There's no cameras allowed in the site. You're only supposed to take memories, nothing else from the cave as well. On the way out, there's rushing water. You can throw yourself in down the rushing water, or you can go between two rocks. It's almost like infinity water below. It's really a substantial thrill from beginning to end, and everything is explained by the guides, so you get the whole feeling of why you're in there and what happened in the past. It's a stunning day. The road's interesting. Once you get off the main road, it is a little bit interesting to get to the site. That's probably a good thing, because then not every Tom, Dick and Harry is heading over that way and denigrating the site.
That day sounds amazing. And then on to the next day then, which is then going to be the one that you wouldn't do.
Yes, the Black Hole Drop. There's an area just south of Belmopan, and there's a beautiful resort there, and they focus on the nature. We have all the river, the cave experiences, and in this particular instance, you spend your morning gently climbing up, because it is quite steep, gently climbing up quite a decent-sized hill. When you get to the top, you're tethered up with all the safety gear, and you abseil from the top to the jungle floor below. It's about 30 meters, 100 foot. And there are no walls. It literally, once you lean backwards over the hole, it's just a total drop, which is why it's called Black Hole Drop. It's sheer black until you get down to the bottom. A little bit of light comes in. So it's terrifying, thrilling, and amazing all at the same time. Does take a little bit of energy, but I mean, British Army guys, would stand at the top there sometimes sort of quivering, and then you get these little slips of lasses just throwing themselves off, screaming all the way down. But it's all the people I've spoken to that have done it, and I have to say that because I haven't done it myself, they all just absolutely rave about it, and so excited that they actually managed to do it and feel that they've achieved something spectacular. Certainly that's the view from my wife after she had done it.
And then the next day, then we're leaving Belize on the trip, and we're heading into Guatemala.
Yeah, to Tikal. Tikal is arguably the most prestigious and established site in the Maya Mundo, the Maya world. Especially if you want to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, go up to Pillar 4 and watch the sunrise. That's quite a thing. The pillars are very, very steep. So some of them are closed off to people going up them. Other ones you can go up. There's obviously rope pulley systems. The site is quite spread out, so a good amount of walking. The thing to point out on any site in Belize and Guatemala is not just visiting a Maya site, some of which are sacrificial, some of which are royal palaces, some of which are for fortification, protection. They all have a story, and they all have this incredible nature. So you're likely to see coatis, coatimundis, quashes, silver foxes, iguanas, parrots, but howler monkeys. I mean, it's quite a dynamic. It's not just one thing. You are doing a nature tour at the same time, which is the amazing part. And Tikau, you could literally spend 2 full days there and not see everything. It is, as I said, quite a spacious site. But the main quadrangle of pillars is just absolutely breathtaking.
And then, so then we're heading to the lake, aren't we? Which is Guatemala's second largest lake.
Yeah, Patanitza. Again, it's everything you would imagine with a situation where you just want to be at peace with the world, forget where you are, just lap it all in, take in the nature, take in the silence, and all the aspects of that environment. And then Flores is this cute little island. It's quite built up, but it's very cute. It's picturesque, great for photographs of it, and great to be on it. Cute little island. There's not. It doesn't. I don't think there's many places like it, to be honest. I'm sure there are in the Far East, etc. But it's very idyllic. Spending time there is certainly something to get into the culture of Guatemala, which is very different from Belize. The dynamic of the Guatemalan culture is completely on a different level. So for people going there, they will certainly notice a massive difference in how everything works between countries.
And is it easy to go between the two?
Yes, we tend to make life easy. I mean, the border crossing, you're either lucky or you're not. It's like a lot of border crossings. You can arrive at Heathrow and be behind 2 A380s, and it takes you 3 hours. Or you can arrive and there's nothing there and you just walk on up. It's the same really crossing the border. But they are fairly soft, easy borders. So you just really, we make effort to try and cross borders before the big buses come later in the day to make that easy transition. And at the border, there are money changes. It's not controlled, but it is controlled, if you know what I mean. It's a very safe environment. So that's the best way for people is at the border to be changing currencies. Now in Belize, the Belize dollar is pegged 2 to 1 to the US dollar. It has been for many, many years. So it's quite easy to remember how much things are costing if you look at a menu. But one thing I would mention to people is not everywhere you go. If people go off into a restaurant and you see prices and you go, oh, that's pretty expensive, or that's pretty cheap. If it's not mentioned on the menu, if it's US dollars or Belize dollars, people should ask before they order, just so they don't get a surprise one way or the other. Now, it is Belize law that you're supposed to put prices, the currency on, but not everybody is mindful of that. So that's one thing to check. Money goes a lot further in Guatemala, the quetzal, so they can change quetzals out the border going. And if they have quetzals on the way back, again at the border, they can change them back into Belize dollars or US. And it is really the quetzal, although, people will accept US dollars, but it's a specific, exchange rates that they have internally. It's best. And again, not everywhere in these places will accept credit cards. Main sites, obviously, but if you're going to barter at one of the markets, you'll definitely need local currency. So I would say to everyone to get some quetzal at the border.
And then after that, then we're leaving Flores and returning back to Belize, then, aren't we?
Yep, heading over to the rather incredible Quicorca. It used to be called Backpack Island, but it's kind of shrugged that off. Yes, you do see people who are there to hang out for a month and forget the world exists. It's really a throwback to the 70s, 80s, and I wouldn't say flower power and that era, but it is that incredibly relaxed, charming, very fun, happy place. There are no cars. Actually, I lie. There are 2 cars. One belongs to the ambulance, and there's a fire engine. Everything else is golf cart, but most people just walk around. There's not one single paved street in Quicorca. The island was actually split in two 150 odd years ago by a hurricane. And that area is called the Split. And that's where everyone will gravitate towards in the evening. There's live music. There's lots of little bars. People are snorkeling and swimming, watching the sun go down. It's a fabulous place. But anywhere on the island, it's really, I'd say it's just chill heaven. If you want to forget the planet, just like, being on Petanitsa, Key Corker is another place. It's busy. And I say that probably far more Europeans than Americans, whereas the neighboring island of Ambergris Caye with San Pedro, that's more US orientated and less European orientated. But so you'll hear every single accent and language known to man in Key Corker. Locals are astonishingly friendly, and it's a real foodie place these days. There's so many different food options that literally, sport for choice in a small sort of space, essentially. Transfer there is by ferry, water taxi. All this happens inside the reef. The ferries are spacious. They're professional. Everything is well run. You'll be there if you want to. What I usually do is go up on the deck with the captain. There's not that many spaces, so you go and run up, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Just seeing the islands as you whiz by, seeing how calm the water is, and seeing Belize City disappear as you head towards Key Corker. It's just
we're staying there for 4. We're there for 4 nights, aren't we? To finish the trip off is all based from there.
Correct. Yes.
So, what activities have you got planned for us then when we're on the island?
So the Holchan Marine Park and Shark Alley, it's all in the name there. This is a snorkel trip, which is definitely bucket list for anybody going to Belize. As the name implies, the marine park is absolutely stunning. It's very shallow water. It's very calm. You'll snorkel and the guide will point out all the different coral formations, all the various species of marine life that you're seeing. You'll then go to Shark Alley, and it is that. You jump in the water and you're surrounded by sharks. Don't be scared. It's nurse sharks. It's not black tips or anything that'll chew on your left leg or something, and stingrays, and they're just all around you, and they're very gentle and they're curious, and it's just such a heart-poundingly amazing thing to be able to do, just jump in the water. As a rite of passage, we take our kids, so Dara will have been thrown in the water there at 4 or 5, just so that they're not frightened of the water and the big fishes, for want of a better way to explain it. Now, some people might say, yeah, but you chum the water to get the fish, and that's wrong. No, the fishermen would come in from the high seas, come into the calm reef area where Holchan and Shark Alley is, and they would prepare their fish before taking it to the island to market. So they were feeding the marine life there 50, 100 years long before tourism ever came to that spot. So it's not something created for tourism. It was in existence, and we're allowing tourists to come and experience that phenomenon. The other aspect is Blue Hole. Blue Hole was actually discovered many, many years ago by Jacques Cousteau. And I guess as a diver, I had the privilege of diving with his grandson Philippe when I lived in the Dutch Caribbean, and spent quite a bit of time with the Cousteau family. But they discovered that site, and it's basically a sinkhole. It was a cave, and the ceiling collapsed, and it's encrusted. It's like a treasure trove once you get there. But you have to be careful with the depths, because there's not points of references. They're not easy. So it's easy to get euphoric and excited and kind of go down, but that's the guy's job, obviously, is to keep an eye on everybody. But it's just like a treasure trove of formations on the walls, and then you have the marine life. Sometimes you can get lots of sharks up swimming around on the top, and other marine animals. But it is definitely a bucket list. I mean, when I was living in Bonaire and Curacao in the Dutch Caribbean, that's the one thing I always heard about Belize, not having been there, was, oh my goodness, I've got to go and dive the Blue Hole. So that certainly is something. In this case, it's a flyover. You can snorkel, but in this case, it's a flight over. The captain will go one way several times and then the other way, so everyone in the plane has a chance to take pictures. They're 14-seat caravans, the planes that fly over the blue hole. Takes about an hour, and that's just a stunning way to see it. I
think that was really important when I was planning this itinerary, because obviously for me, being a diver as well, scuba diving, the blue hole was obviously on my bucket list and one that I want to tick off. But I appreciate that not everybody wants to go scuba diving. And, people won't have the qualification to be able to do it, etc. So that's why we designed this itinerary with everybody in mind. So they're snorkeling and therefore not scuba diving. But it's another reason why we then put the add-on onto the end of the trip. So if people did want to then go and dive the blue hole, and for those that were already divers, that was there for them as well.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And I mean, I can talk about the extension as well, which includes the blue hole and what that day looks like. I'll come on to that if that's okay.
Perfect, yeah.
So then, I mean, the other things to do on Kikora is literally just chillax. I say it is a very lazy island, but it can get sort of lively with lots of great local music in the evenings. The other activity is manatee spotting. And manatees are we call them the sea cow. They're very gentle. I personally haven't been manatee spotting in that area, but I have been in Placencia, and it's just such a fabulous thing. They're so gentle, and when they're with the baby calves and they come up to have some time on the surface, they're just so incredibly majestic, and it's such a thrill to see them. And the chances of seeing them, obviously, pretty much every trip, it's pretty secure. We know where they graze, we know where they are. And Kikora and San Pedro area are renowned for the great sort of manatee spotting. It's not only manatees that you'll see. The water is so crystal clear. Everything else is visible just without even getting in the water. So that's quite a rare and a special thing. And again, because we don't want to frighten the animals in their own environment, we try and keep numbers quite small so it's smaller boats to give a more personalized and quality experience with everything, essentially.
That's exactly what we're looking for in a tour. Really, we don't really want to be over touristic. Go to places that have over tourism. We want things to be more sustainable, and I think this ticked all of those boxes for us, really.
Yeah, it's on reflection, I mean, I think it's a trip that anybody will take and go, oh my goodness, those are all things that I can't imagine that I could do, and I've done them, and in a relatively short period of time, and 2 countries. As I said, it's a macro travel environment, which is I think very much for us our benefit. I mean, when we do transfers from A to B, if we're picking people up in Belize City and transfer them to a jungle lodge in Mountain Pine Ridge, we'll never just drive to A to B. We always maximize time by putting in itinerary, exciting things to do en route, depending on obviously what the customer is excited to do. So it's otherwise in the same vehicle with the same driver going back on the same road the next day, it doesn't make sense. So we try and maximize intelligently sort of how we manage time, especially.
Yeah, and there's plenty of activities in the itinerary, but there is some time in like Kikora, for example, where the clients will have free time on the trip, like in the afternoons or the evenings. Like, what sort of things can they get up to in that free time?
Now, last time we were in Kikora as a family, we're actually 16 of us, it's a big family. Not all my kids, by the way, I have to say that on my wife's family. We all went fishing, a day trip fishing, and absolutely phenomenal. If you see the pictures, and it's a very local experience, all manner of things. I mean, the name escapes me. Long, ferocious looking fish. What's it called? Not tarpon. My goodness. Oh, what's that long, skinny one with very scary teeth? The name has just escaped me. Gosh.
It'll come to me in a second.
They grow up to 2 meters. I mean, they're quite big fellas. But yeah, so you can go out catching all manner of fish and then come in and barbecue it later. I mean, Key Corker is not so much about activities, although there are, water-based activities you can do. It's more about simply just enjoying the warmth and the charm of the island and what it has to offer without having to call an Uber. I mean, this is really a kickback to times less stressful times, I think, and people will either swim every day, snorkel every day, go and find something to do, or just simply chill out on the beach and then go have a few cocktails at the water's edge in the evening and a great dinner. I mean, you can take a boat trip to San Pedro, which is about 45-50 minutes. San Pedro is a much bigger place. It's busier. It's wall-to-wall, people and things to do. There's a lot going on San Pedro. There's a secret beach there as well. Don't think it's so secret anymore. But when it first, what weird that, isn't it? Called Secret Beach because nobody went there. Then everybody goes there now. Maybe they have to call it Unsecret Beach. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is still special. And it's where a lot of young people go and hang out and party. San Pedro has got a very different dynamic. So it is, some people would take an early boat, water taxi over to to San Pedro, hire a golf cart. As you come off the boat, there's 20 different companies all offering a golf cart hire for the day. That's what we did last time. And just literally spend the whole day trying to run the tank of gas out, going up and down, having fun and seeing everything there is to see. So, and it's all very small scale. I mean, the airport, you walk past the airport and literally you can almost touch the planes. They're all 14-seat caravans. It's right in the center of the town type thing, but not noisy. I mean, when I say airport, I mean little bees taking off all the time. So it was quite fun to see that, actually. So yes, that's a day trip there. There is a resort that is another boat ride away, but it's it's currently being developed for 4 seasons. So we'll have a golf course and a landing strip and able to go there by boat. So in the future, that will definitely be, potential for a day trip to go and spend some time at a very posh, expensive property in an idyllic private island.
That sounds amazing. So obviously, like we said, we wanted to add the extension on for those people who potentially wanted to, spend some more time there and, get to dive the blue hole. So it's a 4-night, 5-day extension that we've added on. Yeah. Do you just want to talk through that a little bit?
Yes. So the blue hole trip, it's a 3-hour trip. And depending on the water conditions, if it's a rougher day with a lot more wind, which generally happens, we call them Easter winds. So around Easter, you can get high winds. So a bit more clip in the water. They'll go, the boat will go straight to the atolls and go through the atolls where it's much calmer sailing. And if it's a regular day, they'll just plug straight out. It's about 3 hours. It's a long day because it starts off at sort of 6:30. And blue hole is always the first dive of the day. Now, it is possible to snorkel the blue hole, and there's quite a lot of people that do that. But on a choppy day, that probably might not be the best thing. Diving would be a much better option. But if there's a diver and a non-diver, the non-diver can certainly enjoy that experience as well by going to the site and snorkeling. And again, for safety, you'll always have guides in the water with the divers and guides on the surface with snorkelers if that's the case. And again, limited numbers, so it's a quality experience. The second and third dives, after the second dive, there's a lunch on board the boat, which is delicious. And there is a more pelagic stuff around a place called the Elbow, which is on the corner of the atolls with a bit more current. So a lot of big pelagic marine life to see in that area. So the second and third dives get shallower, and then another dive on the atoll. Now, it kind of depends on the day. They don't always go to the same atoll. And one of the beauties about Belize is there's no moorings like a lot of countries. It's all, you're free diving, and the boat will pick you up at the end of your dive, and you just gently drift along with the current. So it is quite a nice way to do diving. And the current's never that strong in the reef. Yes, elbow, that area, there is a bit more current, which is why you get the bigger stuff. So that is getting decent diving. And then so you're getting back about 6:30. So it's about a 12-hour day with lunch included, and three tanks or 3 snorkel options. In the winter, again, because we never want to disappoint people, because numbers are lower, the dive companies will take in turns. It's a minimum 6 to go to Blue Hole because of the distance and the cost of gasoline to get there, for example. So they'll always go together. So on Monday, for example, in the low season, dive company A will take everybody that wants to go, dive company B on Tuesday, etc., etc. So we never disappoint people. So even if somebody does want to go in the low season, it doesn't mean they're not going to get the opportunity to go out there. I always suggest, and we do as the tourist board, we suggest that people do a dive first, a regular reef dive, to check the equipment and you're comfortable with the water, because every ocean is different. Every environment is different as well with the currents, and obviously you want to make sure you don't get all the way out and there's an issue with your equipment. So that's the warm-up dives have on the reef. Then either the second or the third day of diving can be the Blue Hole. Distance to reef in San Pedro very short. It's 5 to 15 minutes. Out of interest, if you dive in south of the country, in Placencia, it's a good 45-minute boat ride out to the atolls and the reef and the islands out there. So again, there is a very healthy reef system, and also the guides are fun. I mean, these guys, they'll take you and point. Literally, they exactly know where the seahorses are hanging out, where all the little critters are, because they're in the water every day and they have really good memories. And yes, we know nature moves around, but they really are there to support people in seeing as much as they can during their dive experiences.
Amazing. And that's just we'll be staying at a completely different resort for that extension, won't we?
Yes, yeah. Ramon's is really the penultimate dive property in the country, essentially. And it doesn't matter where people stay in San Pedro, we will only use, in this case, their dive shop. Rick, the manager, has been there 20, 30 years. All his team are very solid. So we do it based on the quality of the service and the boats. I mean, they run sort of 42, 48-foot Newtons when they're going all the way out, and they run, shorter, smaller skiffs with biminis when they're just running locally on the reef. So they've got the right equipment for the right job, essentially.
And in terms of, obviously, most of our clients are in the UK. Visa-wise, to get to Belize and Guatemala is super simple for people from the UK.
Yeah, very easy. It's some people look at it as a negative. I always like to turn what can be perceived as a negative into a positive. On the way out, you can fly. If you fly United, it most obviously it's Houston, but it can be, depending on the time of year, Newark, Houston, or Chicago, Houston, and then down to Belize the next day, which is about 2 hours. So it's an overnight in the States somewhere. With American, it's Dallas and Miami, and then down the next morning. The flight down is about 2 to 2.5 hours, depending where you're coming from. Delta goes down out of Atlanta, and there is Chicago with United, and both American and United operate from Los Angeles. Now, it might seem a weird thing to do, to fly all the way to LA or San Fran to go down to Belize. Sometimes the prices can be less expensive going the longer route than a much shorter route. So, that's always something to bear in mind for people, just to check the routing and if pricing is a consideration. Otherwise, for a few dollars more, you just take the more direct route. And again, it depends on time of year, day of the week. You can find some really, really good pricing options. Obviously, British Airways runs with American. in and out of Miami. If anybody, I have to assume that not everybody is traveling on a UK passport that might travel with you. So most people can travel to Belize without a visa. If you're not have a British passport, I suggest contacting the look on the Belize government website. We do have an embassy in central London, so they can check there if they require a visa, and it is that office for all of Europe. The visas will be arranged through the London office, and they're pretty helpful, friendly people. So, and if anybody is taking the trip, again, these are odd things, but sometimes, to avoid disappointment, if you travel as a single parent with a child under 18, you do need some paperwork to cross borders, notarized by a lawyer or a JP. My wife and I sometimes travel on our own with our daughter. Same thing. We just need all the right paperwork to get through the airports and the borders.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that piece of advice. Vaccination wise, there's no vaccination requirements from the UK.
No, nothing required. And if you look on the official websites, you will see that all of Central America is mosquito country. I'm always surprised going into the deepest, darkest jungle and going, where are all the bugs? I see I see birds, I see iguanas, all sorts of things. But mostly in the jungle, you just actually don't see. If you're in deep, dense, and these guys every day, there are chances. I wouldn't advocate people. I'm not a doctor, so I shouldn't really say anything. But I'd say it another way. Most people that take prophylactics because they're worried about malaria or mosquito bites, they would get ill on the medication and stop it. The incidence of malaria in Belize are almost non-existent. What the records have shown is that people have sometimes contracted malaria in Guatemala and come across the border with it, and that's not tourists. That's mostly the local people who are already living in the jungle. So it's relatively safe, I would say, for all eventualities, and no vaccinations required.
Perfect, brilliant. Okay, so just one final question for you then, Nick.
Yeah.
What's the one thing? What would you say to people of why Belize should be on their bucket list?
Safety obviously is the first thing I've mentioned. There's a lot of places you can go to, and safety is a concern. That's not the case in Belize. You can hire a car, you can drive easily anywhere. We just don't drive at night because the driving conditions are different. We don't have street lamps everywhere on the highways like we do, in the UK, for example. And then, sometimes there's speed bumps in the middle of the road and you don't always know they're there. So we just say it's safe to go everywhere. But just like anywhere on planet Earth, you wouldn't go sort of with a stack of cash or a big camera midnight down to a nightclub and expect nothing to happen. So common safety rules, but the people are amazingly friendly and welcoming. If you're driving, for example, it happened to us many times, you get a puncture. Before you got out the car, 10 people are there helping you to jack it up, and they don't want money or anything. They just want to help you. So it is very safe and easy. Obviously, the weather, and yes, we get rain, but guess what? It's warm, warm rain. Generally, the pattern in the rainy season is that it will rain very heavy at night. So that lovely pitter patter on your roof sends you to sleep. So it's wet puddles in the morning, but then it's dry. You go out and do your tours in the afternoon. It might start to build up. Might have a heavy shower for a short time, and then it's lovely and cool in the evening. So you see the stars, and it's just a very lovely climate to enjoy all year round. I think the friendliness of the people, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have 9 cultures. Just to help you with some of the main ones, the main 4 cultures, the Mestizo, which is our biggest population. Then we also have Maya, and there are 3 types of Maya: Yucatec, Mopan, and Quechua, north, west, and south. Then we have the Creole and the Garifuna, which are African descendants who mix with the Latin people, and that's a different type of dynamic. They have their own language, their own cultures, their own music. It's phenomenal. And then we also have an East Indian population in the south of the country, some North American, which are Mennonites, and they have their own villages where, like Spanish Lookout, where they mostly live, still in their own style with the horse and carriage, etc., and their clothing. We have a Lebanese descended population. We have a strong, Latin from Guatemala and El Salvador, people, refugees who have come and then settled and stayed in Belize, and some Taiwanese. So it's a Chinese population. They're all our shopkeepers, if you like. So the reason I mention that in what makes Belize special and why would you come is because they all have their own food, they all have their own dress, they all have their own language, but they're unified by being a Belizean. They're Belizean first, Mennonite second, Belizean first, Taiwanese second, Belizean first, mestizo second, which is really phenomenal. Everybody speaks what's called Creole, and so whether you might only speak East Indian, but you'll speak Creole. You might only speak Maya, but you will speak Creole, and that's the common language that unites everyone. So it's a long-winded way of saying it's the cultures and all the dynamic of that makes it such a phenomenally interesting place to come and visit. And I guess lastly, the ease of moving around, which I also mentioned at the beginning, and it really is. It's just to be able to do 2 or 3 very exciting tours in one day, in a few hours is I think quite unique, particularly with the diversity of those experiences that you can mix up.
Amazing. Well, I am so looking forward to coming out. Obviously, we've planned this trip for 2027 because, at the Bucket List Company, we like to give people the opportunity to pay the trips off. And that's why we didn't want to launch it too soon, because we understand. And also as well, a lot of our bucket listers who have already booked this trip had their 2026 planned already. So we had to give them some time so they could use their holiday allowance well. So there are, like I said, there are still some spaces available on this trip. If this podcast has really tipped your appetite and put Belize higher up on your bucket list, then I'll put a link to the itinerary and to the trip into the show notes so you can go and have a look. But for me, I'm super excited to come out and experience everything Belize has to offer. Nick, thanks ever so much for coming on and giving your local insights. I'm sure you've inspired plenty of people who are listening to move Belize up their bucket list. So thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm very excited to welcome all your guests when they come off the plane and enjoy that first warmth of the temperature and the people.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I hope you are pleased that it's back and running again. And like I said at the start of this episode, I was so surprised with the amount of emails the team have been getting in the office asking when the podcast was coming back. So it's back. I'm back. And I'll be back again with another episode next week of the Bucket Lister podcast. But until then, thanks ever so much and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.